Elizabeth, you and I talk so often about the importance of good sleep for a balanced and happy life. And one of the great things about IKEA is they have solutions for the 6 sleep essentials: sound, light, air quality, room color and furnishings, and temperature, because that is what allows us to create the bedroom of our dreams that will support us in having that excellent sleep we need.
Gretchen, I love IKEA. I am so happy that there's one near my house because it's somewhere that Adam and I go often. IKEA provides the best-in-class comfort solutions, everything from mattresses to pillows to bedding. As always, IKEA prides itself on providing high-quality solutions at an affordable price. IKEA provides solutions for every budget. You can get whatever your bedroom needs at IKEA for a price you can afford.
Do you want to set your child up for success? Is your child struggling with a specific subject or need help with homework? Is your child asking questions on their homework you don't feel equipped to answer? IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. IXL is designed to help them really understand and master topics in a fun way with positive feedback. I mean, with Eliza, she really could have used something like IXL because it would have helped her to get up to speed and stay up with her class in math, which just did not come easily to her.
Don't miss out. 1 in 4 students in the U.S. are learning with IXL. IXL is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And happier listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/happier. Visit IXL.com/happier to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price.
Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about ideas and strategies about how to be happier, healthier, more productive, and more creative. This week, we'll talk about why we should make the most of our first 3 weeks in a new situation with strangers, and we'll tackle a question from an Obliger listener who is frustrated by the fact that her family of questioners and rebels don't do their share. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the 5 senses, human nature. I'm in my little home office, which is not air-conditioned, while we're recording, here in New York City. And joining me today from Los Angeles is my sister, Elizabeth Kraft, my sister, the proud signator, I don't know what the word is, of a will. Elizabeth, congratulations.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And yes, Scratch, after I don't know how many years of talking about it on the podcast, Adam and I have signed our will. We felt very good about ourselves.
Well, and many listeners wrote in to say how happy they were to hear that you did a will, sending you all those gold stars. People also said it gave them a jolt, realizing they needed to update their own wills because their family situations had changed, etc. And then we got this funny message from Christina.
Yeah, she said, I shouted, finally, when I heard Elizabeth's gold star today. Then I realized I have 2 small kids and no will myself, so I really need to create one too.
That's good, right? Yes, Elizabeth, this is a good reminder for many people,
yes,
so this is excellent. And then before we jump in, we got a great additional mnemonic from Keisha.
Yes, she said, I'm a big fan of your podcast and books and even attended an event in Chicago last year for your Life in 5 Senses tour. Your most recent episode mentioned a helpful way to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, and I wanted to share another mnemonic device that my high school French teacher taught our class. So it's 30's hot, 20's nice, 10 is cold, 0's ice.
I love that.
Yes.
That's terrific. So now our try this at home tip is to make the most of the first 3 weeks of an experience.
Yeah, so explain that, Gretchen. What are you trying to get out of it?
Okay. So this is something that I read recently in connection with sort of my research into the open door phase of life, which is my rebranding of the empty nest phase of life. And it's a really useful thing, I think, for freshmen going to school, anybody going back to college. I told both Eliza and Eleanor this. But Elizabeth, I think it was also relevant to sort of our hiking trip. So this is what I came across. So this is from a piece written by Nicholas Christakis in the New York Times 10 years ago. So this is from a while back. Christakis is a doctor, sociologist, and a professor who directs the Human Nature Lab at Yale. What a great place to work.
Yeah.
And I'll post a link to this article. But what he says, I'll just read it, an edited version, because I think it's so interesting. He writes, at the start of freshman year, there's a window of opportunity when customary rules about social interactions are suspended, and when it seems perfectly normal for someone to sit down next to you at lunch or in class and strike up a conversation. Social inhibitions tend to dissolve when a group of strangers enters a new environment. Think of adults on a cruise, teenagers at a summer camp, or Chaucer's garrulous pilgrims, chatting and revealing volumes about themselves. The bond is all the more guaranteed when facing a shared hardship, say the boredom of freshman orientation sessions or the stress of placement exams. But after that critical window, a curtain begins to fall on the welcoming social scene. In my experience, this tends to occur about 3 weeks in. Attitudes begin to solidify. Friendships become fixed. And behaviors that initially seemed open and generous might come to feel forced or even a little creepy. So when I read this, I immediately went to Eleanor and said, you have this opportunity at the beginning of freshman year, but don't assume that it's going to stay this way. It's sort of a part of a new situation, but then it changes.
Yeah, I remember still, Gretchen, the first night I was at college, going up to the steps on Columbia where everyone hangs out by myself, seeing a girl who I just liked her face. I went up to her, introduced myself. Her name's Jahan, and we are still...
You're kidding!
She's still one of my best friends today. So I absolutely get this. And I know exactly what he's talking about.
Well, and it's interesting because Eleanor did a gap year, so she did programs. And she said, and many of them lasted longer than 3 weeks. And she was saying this really struck her as accurate, that at the beginning there's sort of this free-flowing and everybody's kind of hanging out together. But then as time goes on, different groups begin to split off. And everybody accepts that as natural. It doesn't seem unfriendly. But it's just, you don't have the same flexibility or opportunity that happens at the beginning.
Yeah, so you can't just hang back and sort of see what happens. You have to really go for it. And then adjacent to this, Gretchen, is don't wait for people to come to you. You need to go up to people as well. Right. And that can be hard.
Yes.
But if you push through, then you get the friends. And then 3 weeks down the road, you will be situated and feel comfortable.
Well, and I always think it's good to realize that you're in a stage, because sometimes we just automatically assume, or at least I automatically assume, this is the way things are. And it's helpful to say, well, it's not always going to be this way. So take advantage if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. But it's an opportunity that is fleeting. There is this burst of friend-making activity at the beginning. And so it's just helpful to recognize that this is a stage, and it is a stage that won't last.
Yeah, and Gretchen, I'll point out, this isn't just true for sort of kids starting 7th grade or 9th grade or whatever at a new school. It's also true for the parents.
Yes.
So when your kid is just starting, it's perfectly normal, again, to go up to parents, to ask parents over for dinner or, you know, a family barbecue or whatever. But again, after a certain amount of time, you feel odd inviting a random person over.
Well, I remember this with kindergarten. A friend of mine said at the beginning with kindergarten parents, they're super interested in meeting other parents. And there's all this flurry of activity. But they're like, every year that your child gets older, there's less of that. So again, I was really happy that somebody who had more time and experience told me this is a stage, but it's not a stage that will last. Take advantage of it. But and listen to the idea that, you know, we often say what's true for teenagers is probably true for adults. You and I experienced this on our hiking trip in England in partnership with Wilderness England. Our trip lasted a very short time, so we didn't hit that 3-week wall.
Right.
But it was very noticeable to both of us how open and fluid the group was in terms of social interactions and social energy. And it's interesting to think about. I mean, we thought, oh, it's the hiking. It was all these aspects of being in that environment. But it's also just part of being in this window of time.
after that window closes, you have to work a lot harder
Yes.
to meet people.
Well, and I found this I took that watercolor class and I was talking to Eliza about a cooking class that she taught. There is sort of an openness at the beginning and then things tend to solidify. I always like it when somebody tells me something that I'm like, oh, now my own experiences are organized and make sense in a different way.
Yes. Side note, Gretchen, if someone's taking a child to school, listen to episode 125.
Right. So this is funny, Elizabeth, because in that episode, this was 7 years ago, I just looked in my timeline book that I keep and I realized that Eliza's drop-off day in college is 7 years to the day, August 22nd, of Eleanor's drop-off day. And I thought, we did a whole deep dive into this. We had all these suggestions from listeners, hacks, what to bring, what not to bring, all this. I went back and looked at it myself. Super helpful. Of course, I remembered none of it. So I was taking notes on, do this, do that. Yeah, so anybody who's taking a child to school, episode 125 is very helpful, as I reminded myself.
Excellent.
So let us know if you do try this at home and how making the most of the first 3 weeks works for you or how you've noticed it working in the past. Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email, podcast@GretchenRubin.com, or as always, you can go to the show notes. This is happiercast.com/496 for everything related to this episode.
Coming up, we've got a happiness hack that will help you leave on time. But first, this break. Shifting my wardrobe from summer to fall is always a challenge. Luckily, Quince offers timeless and high-quality items I adore, ensuring my wardrobe stays fresh and I don't blow my budget. Gretchen, both of us absolutely love Quince's Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which come in so many great colors. My goal for fall is to get the green color that you have.
Yes, Elizabeth, I brought that green sweater on a recent trip together and you were eyeing it. Quince has cashmere sweaters for $50, pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and so much more. And the best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
Okay, Gretch, we're back with a happiness hack. This is a phone alarm hack.
Yes.
Explain.
I hit on this one myself. So it's about being on time, but it's also about reducing anxiety and restlessness and sort of being in two places in your head at one time. Because what I realized is, and I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but when I'm in a conversation with someone or I'm at a party or something, I very quickly forget that I'm supposed to be tracking time. And then all of a sudden I'll jump and I'll be like, oh my gosh, is it 12:30? I need to go. But then I check my phone. Oh no, it's only 12:15. I'm fine. And anyway, it's just very disruptive. And I get these jolts of anxiety. Or I'll be talking to somebody and I'll think, oh my gosh, I need to leave at 12:30. If I look at my phone or my watch, it's going to be very disrespectful for the person that I'm talking to because it will seem like I'm bored or I'm just checking my watch. But in fact, I just need to keep track of the time and I don't know what time it is. And so anyway, I find that very distressing. So what I realized is now I just set an alarm on my phone 10 minutes before the time where I would need to leave or the time that I really need to track. And what I found, and you might say, well, but Gretchen, isn't it really distracting when you're in conversation with somebody and your alarm starts going? What I found is it's not that, because I'm just oh, sorry, my phone's going off, let me turn it off. People are more used to that. It's then you're responding to something that's distracting you. You're not visibly looking away and showing that you're not paying attention. Or if I'm at a party, I've done this and nobody can even hear that the alarm's going off. I can hear it and I'm aware of it, but nobody else knows. But it gives me this confidence because I know that I'm going to get this signal that I need to start thinking about transitioning to do something else. I need to start winding up a conversation or I need to start just moving towards whatever it is. And what I found is that it makes me so much more relaxed because I didn't realize how much this little voice in my head was being watch the time, how's the time, keep checking it. And I would surreptitiously try to look, which is hard to do. And I would just worry that I would forget. And it's okay, just set an alarm. It's just then I don't have to worry about it at all. I have an alarm.
Well, also, if you are worried about it being rude, if you're meeting with someone, you could just say at the beginning,
Yes.
I'm going to set an alarm on my phone because I have to leave, and then I won't have to worry about it. And people will absolutely understand that.
Yes.
And then, Gretchen, you pointed out you could also do this, like if you have a certain amount of time to take a walk.
Right. So if you want to make sure that you remember to turn around so that, you have to leave as much time to get home as you did to leave. And I've sometimes kept walking too long and then realized, oh my gosh, I have to practically jog back. So then you're free to just enjoy your walk and not have to keep checking the time. But Elizabeth, back to your point about how you can say something when you sit down, I often try to do this when somebody else I know has to worry about their time. I'll say something like, oh, I know that you have a time constraint. So, keep checking the time if you need to, or set an alarm if you need to, so that they feel like they are socially excused from checking their time. Because sometimes people will be like, okay, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to take off at 12:30. And I'll say like, okay, yeah, you can keep checking your phone if you need to. And that seems to make people feel more relaxed as well.
Yes, it's funny. I am one of those people, if I know someone has to leave,
yes,
I am watching the time. I get very anxious.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't want them to be late. Yes. And it distracts me as much as if I'm the one that has to leave.
Right. So you're like, why don't we both set an alarm so we can both just chill out? Yes, I know. Listen, you and I both put a very high value on being on time, and that can create its own anxieties.
Absolutely.
And now for a 4 tendencies tip. We got a very interesting question from a listener, Jen. And before we launch into Jen's question, again, if you do not know what we are talking about, you can learn about the 4 tendencies personality framework. You can take a quiz to find out if you're an upholder, a questioner, an obliger, like our listener here, Jen, is an obliger. Or a rebel if you go to GretchenRubin.com/quiz. If you go there and you go to my website and look up the 4 tendencies, all will be revealed. But for the purposes of this discussion, we will assume that you are up to speed on the 4 tendencies.
Yes. So Jen said, I attended Gretchen's book tour stop in D.C. During the Q&A session, Gretchen commented, obligers may feel as if other tendencies are taking advantage of them, because they are. A nervous laugh spread through the crowd. Clearly, lots of upholders, questioners, and rebels realized the jig was up. This comment hit close to home, and I've been thinking about it for the past year. I'm an obliger married to a questioner and have 3 teen-tween children, 2 questioners, and 1 rebel. As a typical obliger, I am quick to drop whatever I am doing to attend to their requests, even though it has a significant impact on my schedule and ability to complete my professional projects. I work from home. If my actions were reciprocated by my family, I wouldn't be writing this. I find it a daily battle to keep my cool when questioned or ignored by family members every time I ask for help with household routines and chores. The household expectations have been clearly spelled out to everyone, but often these tasks are left for me. All the time spent helping my family and picking up the slack around the house eats into the time I have set aside for work. I feel overwhelmed, underappreciated, and frustrated by the inability to complete my work. Many days I lose my cool and experience full-on obliger rebellion. I have retaken the 4 tendencies quiz multiple times because it seems abnormal for an obliger to experience rebellion so frequently. However, it always affirms I am an obliger. What advice do you have for an obliger mom who wants to continue to nurture her non-obliger family while avoiding the pitfalls of being taken advantage of by non-obliger family members? Oh, Gretch, I bet many people could have written this exact letter.
Yes, absolutely. And I have so many thoughts. The first thing I would say is other tendencies, questioners, upholders, and rebels, they expect you to draw the lines yourself. They will not hold back from asking because they expect that you will say no. The way that they would say no. They would all say it from their own perspective. They each have a slightly different perspective, but they would say no. And so remember, from their perspective, they are not being exploitative or inconsiderate. They're asking. They're taking their shot, or maybe they're just not doing something and seeing how that plays out. And then it gets done, right? So that is working for them. So this is the coldness that often surprises obligers, because the obliger says, if you ask me to do it, I'll do it. if I see that you need this done, I will do it for you, but you're not reciprocating for me. And this seems very cold. And they don't understand that from other people's perspective. They're just like, well, why would I do it? Or if I don't do it, you do it. That seems fine to me. Or, I just want to ask you a lot of questions about it because I just need to know, I'll have a lot of reasons and understand exactly if we're doing the most efficient thing. So they don't perceive it the way you perceive it. And so in a way, it might be just as annoying, but maybe it feels less personal if you understand that this is really something that is coming from the nature of those tendencies. It's not, because I think a lot of times with these kinds of situations, it feels very personal, like someone is very personally doing something inconsiderate to you instead of like, oh, this is how they do.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I would say.
And then what can she do to make it better?
Okay, right. That's the big question. Always when you're talking to an obliger, and of course, obliger is the biggest tendency. This is the biggest tendency for both men and women. So I'm sure many listeners are obligers and have experienced this. Is that you need outer accountability even to meet an inner expectation. So a lot of times, if you would complain about the situation to another tendency, they might say things like, well, you just need to have a firmer boundary, or you just need to say no, or you just need to make yourself the priority, or you need to take time for self-care, all this stuff. These are all good things to do, but they are not going to move the needle for an obliger. For an obliger, you need to have outer accountability. And here are some ways you could, in your own head, create outer accountability in this kind of circumstance with your family. The first one, Jen has already mentioned, which is obliger rebellion. The more resentful and angry you get, the more you are going to go into obliger rebellion. It is not uncommon for an obliger to be in full-on obliger rebellion for years. This is not good for anybody. You do not want to get into that situation. So maybe you say, if I don't draw a boundary and say no or refuse to help when you ask for my help, I'm going to go into obliger rebellion, and that could really be destructive. And so I have to protect myself now in order to help protect you later, because I might really step back from this in a way that wouldn't be helpful for anyone. And so that's one thing. Another one is think of your duty to be a role model, right? So these are children, and you want to say, I want to be a role model for what it looks like for someone to establish boundaries or for someone to stand up for themselves. Like, this is behavior that you want to show them how it looks like for an adult to do that, and so you have to do it in order to be that role model. You also don't want to create an environment where you're a negative role model of someone being exploited or someone being taken advantage of by inconsiderate family members or partners. You don't want to show that to them and be like, okay, this is okay as a dynamic, because you're contributing to that dynamic. You don't want to contribute to that dynamic, but that is the dynamic that's being created. And you're sort of like, okay, I don't want to be a negative role model. I want to be a positive role model, and I don't want to be a negative role model.
Yeah. And Gretchen, another thing you can do is treat yourself like a best friend, Gretchen. What would you tell your best friend in this situation?
Yes.
Do the same.
Give advice to an imaginary best friend and then take that advice. Because we say treat yourself like a toddler, treat yourself like a professor. So this treat yourself like a teenager. This is treat yourself like your best friend. But here's another thing, and maybe this is even the most practical, and this goes to the working from home, is something that often will work for obligers is to realize explicitly that they are in a situation where they have to say no to somebody. Because, as an obliger, you want to meet outer expectations. And this is one of the most valuable things about obligers, and one of the reasons that everybody loves having them around is they're the people that go the extra mile to meet an outer expectation. But sometimes you're going to have to say no to someone. And so you make that very explicit. So you say to yourself, look, I have my obligation to work. I have my obligations to, whether it's a colleague or a client or a student or a boss or whoever it is you're working for, and saying, I told them I would get them this by 6. If I say yes to you, child, I'm going to have to say no to that person. And even if it's not a deadline like that, it's just like, these are my commitments. I have to meet these commitments. And I'm going to say no to you because I have to say yes to these commitments. Because a lot of times obligers are like, well, I'll just crowd everything in instead of saying, I'm saying no to you so I can say yes to someone else. That can often help.
And Gretch, finally, just don't do the work.
Yes.
Don't do that load of laundry for your child or your husband.
Yes.
Don't clean the counter. Don't empty the dishwasher.
Yes.
And just let it go. eventually, in theory, somebody else will do it, or at least there will be a serious discussion about it.
Yes, this is the problems that arises when there's shared work. And running a household, that's a kind of shared work. And you're doing the work and you're doing other people's work and they're not doing their share. This is extremely frustrating. I wrote a whole article about the problem of shared work and different solutions for shared work. But again, as an obliger, you have to create accountability for not doing those things. So think to yourself, I want to be a role model for expecting every member of a household to contribute. And if I'm just doing all the work, I'm not modeling that. So that's a kind of accountability. So whatever works for the way you think, because obligers differ in what works for them, but just don't go ahead and do it. Because if you're going ahead and doing the work, everybody's like, well, whatever she's saying, I can just ignore it because everything's just going along fine. There has to become a point where work doesn't get done, and that's painful. And if there's certain things that are really important to you, maybe you want to take on those tasks because other people aren't doing them, pick things that you don't care about and assign those to people, because then if they are not getting done, you can stand it.
Yes.
Or maybe you do your own laundry and let other people do their own laundry. So you've got your clean socks, but let them worry about their own clean socks.
It's funny, Gretchen, because I am an obliger, as you know, but this is not something I struggle with, although I know many do.
Well, you're an obliger who tips to upholder. And I would say from this question that Jen almost certainly is an obliger who tips to rebel. Yeah, and it's just this idea that just because two people are obligers, there's still going to be tremendous variety in how that expresses itself, how you address it, but it gives you big, big clues on where to start. This is going to be fascinating to hear from listeners because, as you said at the beginning, I bet many, many people have faced this. So what are your solutions? What have people come up with? If you're the questioner or the rebel or the upholder in this kind of situation, how do you think about it? I do think, Elizabeth, you're right. This is a very common scenario. Let's hear from all sides.
Look forward to that. Okay, coming up, Gretchen has a gold star for one of her daughters. But first, this break.
I want to let you all in on a little secret. As a family, we used to waste hours a week going up and down the grocery aisles for the best, freshest fruits, vegetables, meats, and still be disappointed. Now we use Fresh Direct. We love Fresh Direct. We save so much time every week. We can grocery shop from the office, from the couch, anytime we want. We've used it for years.
Fresh Direct is farm to kitchen, food sourced directly from farmers, fishermen, and ranchers and delivered straight to your door. For over 20 years, Fresh Direct has been delivering the freshest fruits, vegetables, and meats to the tri-state area. Don't take our word for it. Try it to believe it with $50 off your first order. Go to freshdirect.com and use code HAPPIER. That's freshdirect.com, code HAPPIER for new customers to save $50 on their first order. Terms and restrictions apply. See site for details. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. A new school year is starting soon, and personally, I can't believe I have a 9th grader on my hands. If you're a parent, you want to make this new school year an opportunity for your kids to learn important life skills and continue building independence. For that, I recommend Greenlight.
Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families where kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely, and parents can keep an eye on kids' new money habits. Then there's Greenlight's Infinity Plan, which includes the same access to financial literacy education that makes Greenlight a valuable resource for millions of parents and kids, plus built-in safety to give you peace of mind.
Jack has Greenlight, and it was so great that when he was on a trip to Japan, I was able to just keep track of what he was spending, but he felt very much in control of his finances.
Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/happier. That's greenlight.com/happier to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/happier. Okay, parents, it's back to school time. And that takes some adjustment. There's a lot of effort to get back into the routine, and we're all looking for tips to make it easier to get back into the swing of things. And here is a tip for you. Between backpack browsing and outfit arranging, there's a drama-free way to make vitamins part of your children's morning routine. Little Critters Gummy Vitamins.
My son thinks he's eating fun, delicious gummy bears, all while I know he's getting essential nutrients for his health and development. He is 14, but even at 14, it is so much easier to get him to eat a Little Critter gummy vitamin than it would be to get him to take a traditional pill. Little Critters is a pediatrician recommended kids multivitamin gummy brand and the yummy way to start the new school year. Shop now.
Okay, it's time for demerits and gold stars. And Elizabeth, this week it's your turn to talk about a demerit.
All right, Gretchen, I have an Orange Theory demerit. Everybody knows I have set the goal for myself to go to Orange Theory Fitness 50 times in 2024, and I am over halfway there. But since we've gotten back from our hiking trip in England, I have not gotten back into my consistent groove with it. So I've gone a few times, but before we went, I was really religiously going twice a week. And now I just haven't gotten back into it quite the same, which means I haven't gone twice a week, every week.
So I think that this is a good example of something that I write about in Better Than Before, which is that starting is often easier than starting over. That there's kind of a special energy at the beginning that you can carry through. But I think the hiking trip somehow to you disrupted that flow, and you're having trouble getting back into that flow, right?
Exactly. I also think I thought of it as prep for the trip too, because I wanted to get in better shape. And while I still want to get in better shape, I don't have that sort of beacon in the distance.
So what are you going to do to try to get back into it?
Well, I'm really trying to just rely on that number 50, and I'm constantly doing calculations for, okay,
good.
Let me do this so that I can get to that number 50. I need something like that, or else I absolutely won't do it. So this week, partly knowing that I was giving myself this demerit and wanting to report back, I did go twice.
There you go.
So I'm hoping that continues on. And what I'm trying to do is just know that I very well may not feel like going, and that's okay. I got to go anyway.
Right.
Don't wait till I want to go.
Right. Well, this is a demerit working exactly as it should, which is by giving yourself the demerit, it sort of shocks you into better behavior. But I think that that's great because I think one of the things you've said about Orange Theory is like everybody sort of sets their own level. And sometimes with something, you're just like, I'm going to do it at the easiest level. I'm just going to show up. And then when you get there, often you find that you want to do more. Like if you're going to go for a walk, you're like, I'm just going to go for a 10-minute walk instead of a 40-minute walk. But then you get out there and it's easier. So I think giving yourself the permission to dial it up or down might make it easier to do it if you're not feeling like going.
That's a great idea. So I will report back. Hopefully I'll be back into my groove. I do really enjoy it, especially when it's done. So I'm going to improve. All right, Gretchen, what is your gold star?
Okay, well, so as I've said many times, we are fast approaching move-in day for freshman year.
Yes.
And I have to say, I think I'm a little bit short-tempered now, and I think things are bothering me more. Little things that go wrong or annoyances just sort of feel like they're grating on me more. And I'm just cutting myself slack and saying, it's just this time, this big transition is coming. It's emotional, and so I'm just sensitive. But Eleanor is very calm, very cheerful. She's like doing her errands. She's just participating in her family. She talks about being nervous. She says, I'm starting to feel a little nervous, or everybody's got to be nice to me because I'm starting to feel nervous, but she'll say that. But really, I think that she is being remarkably calm. And so I'm impressed. So I'm giving her a gold star.
And Gretchen, I'll point out the fact that she has done these various things this year, taking a gap year, she has entered brand new situations where she didn't know anyone, had to settle in, get in a groove, and make friends. So she's practiced at this now.
I absolutely agree. I think that's great. And she's just sort of has more independence and maturity generally. But one of the things she did is she went on this trip to Thailand and did a bunch of stuff there. And one of the things that they did is they went bike riding. And Eleanor learned to ride a bike years and years ago, but then she hadn't ridden a bike for such a long time. And so she had to, like, in a kind of crash, relearn how to ride a bike. They say you never forget, but Eleanor's like, you do kind of forget.
Yeah,
so she quickly got up to speed on the bike. So then she's in Thailand, and they're in this bananas traffic, and there's bicycles and there's dogs and there's cars and it's going up and down and she doesn't know where she is. And she said by the end, she kept up on this bike trip and she was biking. And then she got to the end and she just burst into tears because it was so overwhelming. But she did it. And so now I'm always like, if you can ride a bike in traffic uphill in Thailand, you can do this.
Yes.
To me, that sounds like the hardest thing to do, especially if you're not used to just even bike riding in the suburbs. And so I always joke with her because she'll mention something and I'm like, well, look, if you can go bike riding in Thailand, I think you can handle that. So that's just become our inside joke. I think she feels excited and ready and nervous, but she is staying calm. So gold star.
Gold star to Eleanor. Can't wait to hear about college.
And the resource for this week. Okay, speaking of parents and students and the school year, we have updated the Explore page in the Happier app with fresh tips, hacks, suggestions to help everybody navigate the back-to-school season. This time of year can be challenging in many different ways, many different levels. So if you are looking for ideas for making the most of this time, creating memorable experiences, getting everything done as calmly as possible, open up the Happier app, go to the Explore tab, and scroll down to the audio clips. You can listen now whenever you're on the go. And if you don't have the app yet, just download it at thehappierApp.com.
Back to school is here.
Yeah, it's happening. And what are we reading? Elizabeth, what are you reading?
I am reading We're Experiencing a Slight Delay by Gary Janetti.
And I am reading Grown and Flown by Lisa Heffernan and Mary Dell Harrington. And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Make the most of the first 3 weeks of a new experience with strangers. Let us know if you've ever tried it and if it worked for you.
Thank you to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft.
Follow us. Rate us. Give us those 5-star ratings, if you please. Review us. It really helps other people discover the show. And also, if the show brightens your day, send others this way. It is how most people discover our show.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward. Elizabeth, the thing that baffles me about packing for college is command hooks. Command hooks feel like magic. They stick on the wall, they hold things up, and then you take them off. I don't understand. I'm like, what is the physics behind this? I keep meaning to look online and try to understand it because they feel like a magic thing.
I know, we didn't have those in college, and how I wish we did.
I can't even tell you how many command hooks Eleanor is packing. A lot. From the Onward Project.